actually running. Hello, Leah.
Hello, Thomas.
Let's do everything again, right?
Sure.
So I just said Leah shared a wonderful post where she actually demonstrated, told the world how she actually grew app revenue by 50%. Yeah, and that was super interesting. So I asked her if she would be willing to share some more details here on LinkedIn in a live stream, and she agreed. So now we're here.
Really pleased to be here. It's really nice.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your insights. So we will have a conversation about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then everybody has the chance to actually ask questions afterwards, right? Let's see where it actually goes. We'll just go through the different stuff you did, right? Start a little bit with the situation you had, and then we'll just go through the experiments. Is that okay?
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Okay,
Yeah.
so quick
Perfect.
introduction.
Yeah.
So I'm Leah. I'm a product and growth consultant. I've been working in the product industry for 13 years or so now. Makes me feel so old. I mostly work for B2C apps. I work in a lot of education app, dating app, health and fitness, and creator-led economy as well. And essentially, a few months ago, I joined this company that was struggling with their growth. They were on the market for a few years already, and they did really well for a few years. They grew organically. They had a really nice user engagement, nice user retention, nice feedback as well from the audience. But eventually, it kind of just plateaued. And over a year and a half, almost 2 years before I joined, the number were really flat. Everything was plateaued.
So how old was the company? So for just to have an impression, was it like
I
2,
think
3
it was
years startup?
5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and they kind
Yeah.
of grew for 3 years, and then it just stopped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you came in as a consultant or as a head of product, or what was your role there?
I was leading the product team there.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And so I worked there for a few months, and over those few months we did a lot of work. Part of that work was focusing on monetization, and we did increase revenue by almost 60%, actually 59%.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's really, really awesome. Can you give us also like an emphasis on how big the company actually was? Like,
in terms of staff member, it wasn't a big company. There were about 20, 25 people working there. The product team, it was mostly product and engineering. So we had a decent size engineering team and a decent size product team, but they didn't have a lot more function. Like there weren't a lot of other departments. So very, very like product-led company.
Okay. So that's, I mean, like if you have a smaller team, it tends to be more actionable and not so much, overhead, so to say, right? And the decision processes are faster typically and stuff like that.
Yeah, the decision process is faster, but sometimes even the work is faster. Sometimes you can do more with less people. There's less, analysis paralysis and reporting and sign off, and it's sometimes more efficient, I think, to have a much smaller team.
Yeah. So you arrived at that company, and like, what was the mission, or what was the task they gave you? Was it really, okay, we need to get more growth, or like what was the situation there?
So the idea was more to get growth, as in get more user active on the platform. So we looked, my dog, we looked at the numbers, and well, first there were no numbers, so that was step one, to get data. And once we did get data, we realized that actually user retention was not bad. We had a decent user retention, but we had a major problem with user activation and with monetization. So there were really no point for us to focus on acquisition and grow our user number unless we fix those internal funnel first. So that's what we started with. That's what we started the focus with, and that's why we had the revenue results first.
What do you mean? Like, can you go a little bit more in detail? Like, first you said, okay, we needed to get data, right? So I assume the data was beforehand already, like they had already some measurement, right? So how did you?
Yes.
What was the measurement beforehand? How did you change that? Why did you, like?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if it's a me thing or a market thing, but I've never joined a company that had data that was ready to use.
Okay.
Either, it's big company and they have too much data. There's a lot of it, and there's different system, and this system tell you different story. You don't know which one is correct, which one is not.
Yeah.
You have a lot of historical data that haven't been tracked, like updated over time. So you've got weird value that you don't really know what they mean anymore. And in this case, it was more around events. Like event tracking was never really implemented properly. There were no documentation of what was implemented, and the system that was in place, the system they were using, it was very much behavioral. No, sorry, not behavioral. It was very much demographic data. So it was more, this is our audience, this is who they are, but we don't know what they do. We don't know what they do on the product. We don't know if they stick around. And it wasn't, like, it was nice for, understanding the story or maybe for marketing materials, but it wasn't really useful from a product perspective.
Yeah. Interesting. Like, what tools did you actually use there? Because I guess it was a pure app, or was it a web-based as well?
No, it was pure app. It was native on both iOS and Android. There were no web platform. There's a web presence, but it's more for acquisition. It's not a web app. And they still have a lot of, like, there's still a lot of tool used for tracking, but purely from a product perspective, we just use Amplitude. We got a new methodology for event tracking, which one of my friends is an analyst, and she's amazing. Essentially, every time I work on new tracking, I take her methodology. She has this really clear, scalable way of doing tracking. So we took that. We then apply it across the product. We started by the main component first, and then moved slowly toward the less important area of the product. And from there started to kind of build, dashboard, a bit of visualization. It's not perfect, it's not telling you, hey, here's what you should be doing right now and where you should focus, but it gives you really good visibility of where you're at.
Yeah. So you start with the big picture, right? So you start with the big picture and the most important numbers. And like at the very beginning, you said, okay, we didn't have a problem with retention. We did have a problem with activation, right?
Yes. Yeah. So if you want to grow your user, there's not a million ways to go, right? You can increase your retention. You can increase your your viral coefficient, so get user to bring more user in, or you can acquire new users. And acquiring new user, you can do it via product-led growth or via paid channel or other form of marketing as well. But if you are acquiring new users and you're losing everybody during the activation funnel, what's the point? Like, nobody's actually going to use your product. And if nobody's paying, you also don't have actual budget to reinvest in paid acquisition. So that's a loop that's completely broken. So that's why we started on activation first. And it's the same for user referral and retention. Like, that's great, but you can't get retention if you don't have activation. And before your user bring other people to the platform, they need to be very, very well involved with your platform. They need to really have a good, positive sentiment about it. and be retained and be engaged. And so all of the stuff are dependent on activation being efficient first. So that's where we started.
That's actually just a logical structure you use, right? So you just say, okay, activation is the thing we need to focus on, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to have more ads or whatever, right? And we won't get growth from our users if we can't activate them, right? How did you? What's the measurement for activation? How did you measure that?
Yeah, so in that case, we had a couple of measurements. One was day one retention. So we were considering that if the user have done all the things that we want them to do really in the product at day zero, they would find enough value that they would come back on day one. So that was a very simple measurement. It was very early as well in the funnel because it allowed us to have this really quick feedback loop. I didn't really want to be in a place where our activation measurement would be, at month 1 or month 2, because this is a very slow feedback loop, and it's really, it really doesn't help us as a product team to prioritize our next step if we have to wait so long to get results. So we focus first on day 1, with the assumption that day 1 had a causation with day 7, which would have then a causation with day 30. That assumption comes from other products that I've worked with where we actually did have the number, did have the analysis, and we knew that was the case.
A shortcut. You took a shortcut from your
little bit, yeah. A little bit.
And I guess as well, like your view on the numbers, I also get think that you took that from the past, right? So is it for everybody who looks here, like, is it always that you look first on the activation, if that works or not?
It depends on your product, but in the B2C space, at least, I usually always start with activation. That's kind of the key moment. Once you have activation sorted, you can start looking at your retention, your monetization, and your acquisition.
Yeah. And I guess you worked, like, it's a dating app. You worked previously for Bumble. I think you had some numbers in mind, what is good and what is bad, or something like that, right?
Yeah, so I've worked for 12 dating apps so far.
Oh, 12 dating apps. Okay.
So I have a little bit of an idea of what works and what doesn't work.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Very different scale as well, different product, different scales.
Yeah, because like I just imagine like somebody else watching here, being responsible for other product, doing the same way. You look on your activation, and first thing is maybe it's okay, but is that good or is that bad? So I think that's the typical step. And then you know, like, okay, if it's good, okay, check next one. But obviously you said, okay, the activation is the part we need to start focusing on, right?
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to come to that conclusion, to that point? You started the work, and then, like, how long did it take to say, okay, activation is the thing we focus on first?
I think I jumped to that conclusion pretty quickly, but to get the final data and get the insights and get everything in place to really be sure, it took almost 3 months. So before we actually could do any work, there were a lot of preemptive work.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. It was a data tracking, getting good visibility, was also doing user interviews. This is a product that was very different for me. It's in a vertical that I'm familiar with, but the product itself was very different. It approached things differently to different audience as well. So doing user interview was vital to actually really understand, why people were here, what was the benefit of the product, and what was so different about it as well. What it was that they were using this product and not another one. So we did that.
Can you share something like that? Like you told me you use jobs to be done. I love jobs to be done.
Yes. I do really like that methodology when I start on a new product. I think eventually we almost forget about it a little bit and start moving more into, usability testing and very specific interviews with the user. But at least at first, when you just first start, like, job to be done works so well because you have this really fresh start of, you have this fresh point of view of user that just downloaded your product or just purchased your product. that are essentially taking you through the psychology of that decision. And once you understand the psychology of that decision, you really understand what are the main motivation that are getting people to use your product that you can put forward. You understand what their fear are or their anxiety about the product, which you can answer. You can preemptively answer them before they get there. You also understand maybe why other people are not using it, because you've got all that habit that people have that preventing them from doing any change. And then that's fantastic, because you got all that, like, the pull and the push, and you kind of put it together, and it doesn't give you like a perfect roadmap, but it gives you such a good understanding of what is it that you're doing for people and what's important for them.
How many interviews did you do?
Good question. I think 8 or 9. It wasn't that many. And some I didn't do. Some were also done by other people, but we just recorded everything so I could just watch them. I was like washing my dishes, and just watching a job to be done interview.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. 8 interviews. And did you gather first data and look for something specific in the interviews, or was it in parallel, or did you do first interviews and then check the data whether you can verify that?
No, it was in parallel, but we got the interview much faster than we got the data. So we had the interview from quite early on. Then it took time to analyze them, understand, classify them in different jobs as well. And then I used the big data on the product to kind of first to confirm what was being said. And then also to know which part of the funnel we can apply that to. And in our case, so again, was activation.
Many people always struggle with, condensing interviews. Can you share like what made your app so specific, or how you, condensed the findings?
So, well, not when I was doing my dishes, but like normally I like to have a transcript of the interview. So if you can have an automated transcript, or if you can have someone else taking notes, but actual notes of what the people said, not a summary, then I just like to just go through and just highlight it. And we highlight it with 4 different colors right away. So you've got, or at least do 2 colors if you don't want to do 4. But you've got, the good stuff. So you got all your push and pull, and on the other side, you have your anxiety and your inertia, and you just highlight them really quickly. So it gives you already a bit of a classification. And then I like to so then there's a lot of different methods you can do. But I do like to do an opportunity tree. I think it's just a nice visual. And so I take all of those different problems that you've got highlighted, and then kind of start grouping them together under something that makes sense. And then once you have that done, you can build like a really nice tree that's essentially, you almost kind of follow your product experience, but it's really like all those user, like those real problems that they might have, or those real motivation that you have as kind of a theme almost. And under each, you can start doing a solution.
Interesting. So it's really the classical jobs to be done, right? Inertia and push and pulls and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in practice, you can do it like by the book. But I felt like just watching this interview, just listening, it puts you in a mindset that at some point you don't even have to do all that classification anymore, because you have the mindset where you really understand what people are saying, and you can kind of apply it to your product really quickly. One of my favorite one is to just get quotes from the interviews and just like, put it on your first page on like that landing page. Just put the quote there, see what happened.
Did you do that?
Yeah,
was that one of your experiment?
It was, yeah.
Okay, tell us about the result.
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't tracked as well as I was hoping. It was tracked, so we got results, but I don't know how much I can trust the results. Because it was pre-authentication, and so it's always a little bit the tracking there is always a bit less clear if you don't do it properly, which was the case. But it did show like better performance.
So before we go to the experiments, and I think this is really like also the interesting stuff, what was the difference of your app, or what is the difference from the user perspective? You said like, okay, you looked for the difference, like what makes you special. Yeah, did you find that out in the interviews?
Yeah, I did. I found the motivation, and what I realized is that it wasn't just one motivation. We had very different user personas, really, that had very different motivation, and within those, everybody was almost the same. Like everybody was very, very similar, but those were really different.
Okay.
And like for me, that was really the most interesting part, because it took, sometimes you have a product that's a product that you would use in your day-to-day life, and it's really easy to just, understand it and understand why people would use it. But sometimes you work on product that you're not the audience for that product.
Yeah.
So doing that really allowed me to put myself in those people's shoes and really think the way they think and understand what they wanted. And it's not even just what they wanted out of the product, it's what they wanted out of life. And our product was just a mean to an end for them. So it's just, how can we shape that product to be the mean to your end, to that specific end that you want for all those different personas.
Yeah. Well, but that is exactly what Jobs to be done is saying, right? So, and then, like people never purchase a product, right? I don't, like it's never about the product itself. It's about what you actually want to achieve in your life, right? And for you, maybe it's, I don't know, finding a girlfriend, for your product, getting married or whatsoever, right? It's always about the life goals, right? So you basically you look at quantitative and qualitative data, right? You checked, okay, where do we have, like in the process, in the user journey, a problem, right? And then what next? You started experimenting, right?
No. It would be good. No. Then I started to get a team to work together in a way that was efficient. So start working on, having ceremony that are functional. So that team was working in Scrum. I hate Scrum personally. I think it's such an outdated framework, and it just doesn't work for me. It's a bit slow. So we had to find different way of working. They were also very silo. So they were working in Scrum, but completely different. So you had a design and a CRM team doing like their own thing. And then you had engineering doing their own thing. It wasn't even in the same space. So we had like different space for each. So it was kind of like how to bring all of that together, how to have ceremony that works for everybody, how to have a release cycle that worked for us. We had a bit of an issue with like the way things were QA as well, like how confident are you with what's going live, what are the process to make sure that what we're testing is actually what we want to test, and there's not going to be like a lack of tracking which will mess up the results, or maybe something's not quite implemented the way you wanted it to be implemented, and then actually the result again is questionable. So that took a bit of time as well to just ensure this thing were kind of a smooth up and running process.
Yeah. Which framework do you use if you don't use Scrum? Is it Kanban?
Usually Kanban framework. I think it's a bit more flexible and avoid a lot of the Scrum ceremony. That takes a lot of time. And then I like within the Kanban framework to do not Scrum, but like some of the Scrum ceremony per item. So instead of having a refinement with like your entire team, which, in some company, my entire team is like 60 people. You then suddenly do a refinement with 3 people, which are the 3 people that will work on that specific epic. And it's very cross-functional, and then people are very involved. They can be very vocal about what they're saying. And then it's very different because you don't need as much documentation. You don't need as much... you don't have like a lot of passive people just watching but being bored, or like giving you some random point number. It's very collaborative, and then you get that product mindset in everybody in the team, which is essentially everybody become a product manager in your team, which I think allow you to deliver much better feature, better functionality, better user experience, faster process as well.
So don't be stressed out about your dog. If it's not
she
a
wants
huge dog,
attention.
you can bring
she
her
wants
on
attention.
LinkedIn now.
Yeah, come on, we'll get a lot of likes if she comes on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
She's very popular.
Yeah. Interesting. So how big, how many software developers do you have in the team?
In that specific team, we had two. What did we have? I think we had 2 backend, and then we had 4 front end guys. So it was 6.
Okay, so still you know, that sounds not like an incredible huge amount. You know, like you
No.
could have either 1 or 2 teams, right? But
Yeah.
you still, you know, by Epic, you chunked it down to a feature team more or less, right?
Well, we kind of tried with that specific team. That approach didn't work as well. We kind of tried, but eventually we find some sort of mix framework, which is a mixture of Kanban and Scrum, a mixture of individual. What did you call it? Feature delivery.
Feature focused, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
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 So, but you know, like now you already in month 4 or something like that. You worked a lot in the data, and I guess you didn't ship too much features in that time, right? How did you manage the organization to trust you that this is the right way?
That's actually that month 4, that's like kind of the panic moment, you know, because you're actually like, that's what I was thinking. Like, I've been around for a while, we haven't done anything yet, you know. We've got that roadmap. My roadmap obviously was completely delayed. Everything was delayed. Everything took longer than expected, as you know, it always does. We've had a lot of infrastructure by then, because you know, we did the tracking, but we didn't just do that. We also implemented a new CRM system. We moved our backend infrastructure to a new infrastructure. You know, we brought in like an ESP. We brought in like other tools as well to manage our A/B testing, our paywall. So we had all those integration as well that we did, which are expensive, right? It costs money to get all those tools in. And still 0 results. And I'm thinking, whoa, you know, this is not great. That I've done that a few times now, and I'm getting to that point where it does take about 4 to 5 months to get results. That's the length of time you need. And usually the first 3 months, nothing happened. You kind of, you know, get things moving, and then it becomes then it comes really quickly. Then you start getting results really quickly, and then it's exponential. So by now I trust the process. And the process is, you cannot build anything if your foundation aren't solid. So invest time, get the foundation proper. And then after that, we can move really, really fast. And that's what we did. After that, within the following 5 months, I think we did 32 tests. I don't remember the exact number, but it was around the 30 numbers. And we got results really quickly, you know, and that's actually like, that was only possible because of the foundational piece that was done before.
If you speak about experiments, was it always like an A/B test, or is there different types of experiments, or what is an experiment for you in that sense?
I mean, A/B test is my favorite one, because I think it's the only one that gives you real results. Of course, you can validate things with user. You can do out of the product testing as well, and that's very much encouraged. We should do that, but that doesn't really stop us from doing A/B testing. Multivariate test. That company, at least that team, we didn't have enough users for it to be worth it. I wanted to get significance. You can't get significance if you start having, you know, a lot of variance on a product that don't have hundreds of thousands of DAU. Like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we kept it to 2 variant.
So which significance do you look for, like the 96% or?
Like 95. Sometimes I'm like 93. It's okay. You know, it's like, okay, it's close enough. I mean, this isn't like, we're not, this isn't a hospital. We're not saving life. We just want to have some strong indication that new product proposal is better than the previous one. I perfectly know that the number we're getting on an experiment are not true. When you experiment, say like plus 100%, that doesn't mean that this is exactly the result you're going to see afterwards, right? The people in the experiment are a segment. They're not your total user base. You're not going to see plus 100% in revenue because the experience is saying that. But I know that the new version will give us more revenue than the previous one. I know that it's going to be better. And that's all I'm looking for.
Yeah. Get better every day.
Come say hi.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't
No,
want.
here we go. Oh,
No,
come on. I
running
thought we
away.
get now the likes, you know.
Camera shy.
I thought we were gonna get the likes now. No.
You have to
Okay.
invite me again.
Yeah, okay. So experimentation. Let's move to experimentation. So after 4 months, death moment, right? A little bit panic mode. What was the first experiment you did run?
The first, I think the first one was actually the one on the landing page, changing the copy.
Okay.
So we changed the copy to use some of the job to be done quote. We put some social proof in there as well. Improve, the visual, make it more human friendly. And we changed the registration method as well. We had a lot of registration method. It was kind of big, so we just simplified it. We led with the registration method that were the most used per platform, kind of put everything else under, like here's other things if you need, and simplify that flow a lot. That was the first thing. What I'm saying was not one experiment, by the way. Like registration method was one, copy was one. So that's where we started. And then we did a big change in the hierarchy of the product, in the way. So the UX of the product was built in a way where it wasn't super easy to use. You couldn't use it with one hand. A lot of features were hidden behind other area. It was an old product. Like it's been around for 5 years or so. It wasn't it wasn't necessarily like super user friendly. So we did a lot of work.
How did you find out was it gut feeling, or was it based on research data? Like, did you bring in like 10 more people to see how they behave with the app, or how did you do that? Or was it just, plain gut feeling?
No, I had the data by that point, right? So within the data, I know, for example, that nobody's using some of our features. And then, you can see within the product why they're not using it. I didn't even know the feature existed because it's really hidden, right? But this is a premium feature. It's a feature that brought a lot of value. It's also a feature that matched what people say they want from the product. So, you kind of want to bring that forward. Then we had a lot of reviews. So I went through like all the reviews we had, and there were a lot around like usability. Well, people don't say like it's not usability friendly, right? But they say, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I'm searching for that, or I thought I could do that on your product and I can't. So I just kind of put all of that together, and we had a good understanding that it could be simplified. The second reason was we needed to do that to be able to start doing some paywall testing as well. So I can't do any paywall testing unless we have the feature that are easy access, have a good UX, and are visible within the app. So I needed that to be done to be able to create all those new placements.
But now, now we come a little bit more to the core of the product. Is that still activation, or how did you balance? And like prioritization is always a huge topic, right? How did you? Of course. How did you go with that? Like, how did you do that?
At first, that specific piece of work was deprioritized, as it's not a pure growth activation tactic. It's a bigger piece of work. It's something that we'll do more long term. That was the first thinking. Then talking with the team, I realized that actually it wasn't that much work to do, and that it would really unlock a lot of things for us. It would unlock our onboarding, because we're building a new onboarding, right? But we're building a new onboarding on an old app that we're planning to change. So it was easier to change it. And then I'm building all those premium monetization feature that I can't really do because they're hard to access. So I could have shortcut, I could change the menu a bit, or I can just like, kind of bring things the way they should be brought in the first place. And that it was kind of just like that. It was just really looking at it from a perspective of changing the hierarchy from just a pure UX experience is something we should be doing for a better user experience, but it's a nice to have from a product perspective. However, it will unlock bigger piece of work that are a must have for now to be able to unlock growth.
Okay. So it's interesting to see how you, thought about it? Obviously, it's different than the people who have been in the company before there, right?
Yeah, they weren't super keen on doing that, actually. They were not really keen on changing it, because again, it felt like it's just a nice to have. It's a nice to have a better hierarchy, better navigation.
What gave you the confidence that this is the right thing to do?
I don't know. It's like, first there's something called best practice. It's it works for UX, it works for UI, it works in most fields. I had the user feedback as well, so I knew that I wasn't the only person thinking it was a difficult product to use. And I needed this placement. I needed to have those features presented in a very easy, accessible manner, so I can put my placement. I can't, like, if I want to make money with a product, I need to make sure the paywall comes at the point of value, right, where there's something for the user that makes sense to them. If this is hidden deep in the product, what's like, what am I going to do? I can still put a paywall there, but nobody's going to buy anything because there's nothing to buy.
Like, talking about it, it sounds really like you had the gut feeling, that this needs to be changed, right?
I mean, it wasn't like, I don't know if it's gut feeling or experience, because there's a mix of, I have a bit of data that show me what I should be doing. I have some insight that show me what I should be doing. The only question is, what's the priority of that? Now, I know from experience that this is where we're going to end up anyway, because that's just best practice, right? So there's a question of, do I do it now? Do I do it later? Originally thought later, then talk to engineer, realize it's actually not that much work. It makes sense to bring it forward. While this is happening, I can start planning something else. So it was more of a, I don't know, educated intuition, if you want, rather
educated intuition. Yeah, this is really this is super interesting, because there is like all the decision matrices and how you calculate the business value and stuff like that. Yeah. I once spoke to a very successful entrepreneur here in Germany, like with 250 employees and something like that. And he told me once, and I was shocked. He said, like, my best decisions was always intuition. But he was a super data-driven person, right? So he was working for Bain beforehand. So I knew that he was actually really super data-driven. And I think it's the same for you here. Talking to you, you just described how you collected data, quantitative data, by the numbers. Yeah, you collected qualitative data, right? And then that little third step, then it's like intuition, right? Something on top of that, best practice, like something you feel, okay, we need to change that, right? But I think this, like the third step, wouldn't be possible without experience, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's a bit of common sense. I think it's one of the, most important skill you need to have as a product person. The data tell you so much, the insight tell you so much. At some point, you also need to know how to understand them, how to put them together. So there's a bit of common sense. There's definitely experience there. I don't think I would have made that decision 6 years ago, but there's a point where this is what's going to happen anyway. I can do a mapping, I can do a lot of, presentation. Eventually, this is what's going to happen. So let me save us some time and get there. And also, it was possible because it's a small team. I can't do that in a big, like, there's some structure where you can't do that. Like some of my clients have a much bigger, bigger team, bigger decision-making process. It's much slower. It's frustrating almost for me, because, you have to go through a lot of hoops and loops to get to the exact same results.
Definitely.
But the team size allow us to do that. And then that's why we test. Because I'm often wrong, right? As a product person, we're often wrong. But it's better to be wrong and you test it and you get data to inform your next decision, rather than staying on this indecision side of thing where you're actually never going to find out if it works or doesn't work because you're too scared to test it. So I test everything.
So how did you, like, what was, tell about, let's talk a little bit about the experiments, right? So maybe, tell us a little bit about, especially exciting or good, like what was the best experiment you did run in the time? Like what has the biggest impact?
We run a lot of experiment. In terms of, if we talk specifically about the 50% MRR results, most of that came from only a few. One was a pricing experiment. So a big chunk of that, almost half of that actually came from getting the pricing right. And that came from testing the length of the package, the pricing of the package, the positioning of the pricing for the lens in the market that we were in.
But that sounds like continuous testing as well, right?
Yeah, but
So
we didn't.
So pricing, position, how you market it.
Yeah.
Like out of that spectrum of experiments, what was the most impactful?
It was together. It was really having those three packaged together with the right pricing. The pricing being in line with the market for the key markets. What happened within that is, again, because it's a dating app, people didn't necessarily want to have like this very long commitment. So we didn't really have, I actually tried, but it didn't work, to have annual subscription. Even 6-month subscription didn't do so well. So what we did was really try to find the right balance around the monthly subscription to make the monthly the most attractive one, and price the monthly as one of the best product. So essentially, I did quite an expensive weekly and quite an expensive 6 months, and have a really good, strong, good offer 1 month. And then, so that worked really well in terms, and just like that pricing change on that 1 month with the positioning did really, really well. Placement did really well for us as well.
What do you mean by placement?
So you know how I unlock this new app hierarchy by literally changing everything because of intuition. Essentially, that allowed us to have a new entry point to monetization that were in line with what it was the right time for the right person with the right feature. So I could test all those new placements where you show paywall that are contextual, and that also did quite well. Not all of them. I tested a lot of placement, but a couple of them did really well.
So the moment you presented the upsell, basically, that's the placement. When in time do you show that, right?
Yes, So what's the entry point to payment to your premium feature?
How did you think about, like, how did you, like, obviously pricing was a big change. Obviously you increased the price, right? How did you
in key markets only?
Okay, how did you approach the because pricing is a really sensitive topic, and here we go.
Finally,
yeah.
You took about prices, and she came.
The prices, pricing. So how did you approach pricing?
So pricing did a bit of a competitor analysis to see, how other people were pricing their app. A bit of a market analysis as well. So I like to see how we position based on the cost of living, to see, would you afford that app? Can you afford it? Does it make sense for what you want? And then finally, the big stroke on pricing came from the job to be done again, because during the job to be done, I realized how valuable, I want to say, this is for people, how important it is. It's not for them. It's not something that, you just like a quick purchase and you forget about it. For them, they see that as a life-changing moment where they're committing to something that potentially can change their life. So there were a big opportunity there to actually make that more expensive because of the sentimental value you had to people.
In which pricing area do we talk? Is it like 10 euros a month, 100 euros a month? Or
no, around 20. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So still affordable.
Still affordable. Yeah.
So if you're convinced about the product and the value you get, like 10 or 20 bucks. I mean,
Yeah. But don't forget that, again, we're in the dating sector, right? And there's a perception that those apps are free for most people, that you can get it for free. So for people to want to buy, you want to have like that extra value, because it's a freemium model. You can access 90% of the app for free.
Okay.
So you really need to have that extra value, and that comes from first, like, again, the right feature that actually provide that value, the right messages, so how we talk about it, the placement, at what point we ask them, and with the pricing was understanding how much they were willing to pay for that kind of product because of the impact it would have. Their life, gosh, this is I need a babysitter for
for the dog.
This is work from home.
How old is the dog?
8 months, so still a bit of
pretty,
still a bit
new.
Say hello.
What is it? Germany, it's called a dackel, maybe? Bernhard-Dackel? Yeah?
I think it's tackle in English, so it's one letter difference.
A lot of work, right? A lot of work, because they have their own mind and thinking, isn't it?
Very stubborn dog.
All right. So I just want to tell everybody who's listening, tuning in, that you actually can ask questions in the comments below. And we can, maybe just have one or two of your questions. I also want to tell everybody about an exciting event we have upcoming on 13th of October. It's a conference here in Munich. We rented out a cinema, actually. And we only did that because we could, on the test day, run our own cinemas on the big screen. So that was a lot of fun. But on 13th of October, we have incredible speaker. Marty Kagan is here virtually. Ash Maria also has a virtual talk. We have Justina from DeepL, Anya from Tinder. We have Sebastian from Broad Masterclass, and we have Julia from Alasco, and exciting topics. And best about it, the live stream is for free, so you can join wherever you are. And it's also available for on-site tickets here in Munich. I think it's starting at 350 euros, so quite affordable if you want to join. So let's see if there will come some question in. As for now, what's another experiment maybe which you thought, okay, this will really make a big difference, and it totally failed? Like what experiment?
How much time do you have? That really, on this specific product, I locked some freemium feature that didn't go well at all.
You locked some premium features.
Freemium. Okay. So we had a part of the experience is freemium. You can use a product, and essentially I kind of made that a bit more difficult for free users. So by locking some of the access, which really, should have been premium to start with, because it's a much higher added value. But the way I went about that, the way we went about that as a team, was not necessarily. I don't think we understood how important that was for the free user of the current product. And by doing that, we actually got a lot of complaints. People were very vocal. People were very passionate about that product.
Oh, really?
They were very, very vocal. I think we even had users going into a Facebook group to say, stop using this product. Like, they were very, very vocal. Yeah, people were really vocal about it. So that was, I'm not sure that the locking the feature failed as a test. I don't think, from memory, it didn't show us any, significant improvement. It was flat results, but it definitely failed in terms of how we communicate to users and the perception they had of the product. That was actually quite damaging, even for the brand. So that was definitely a bit of a poor handling of product, like a poor product change. What else?
Did you how many people did you A/B test? Is it 50-50, or do you 1%, or how did you start with that?
50-50. Yeah.
Okay, so quite a big number of the customers already.
We have a lot of tests running in a short period of time, so I needed very quick results for most tests. So we try to maximize the amount of user exposed to the test.
Yeah. So here's a question from Sebastian. He said, would be super interested in the tracking methodology you use. Can you share that? I think also, I mean, yeah, how did you implement that? What did you use? How did you, like, what's the specific about that?
I don't know if there's a name for it. maybe we should. It's essentially it's creating a tracking that's scalable. So you want to use as little information in your event and move as many information as you want into your property. And then we just do it very simply, where we just we go through the product. And if you have a better tool, tell me. But I really haven't found one since. And just put the image on an Excel document, and for literally every action on the product, you have an event. Those events should be reusable. So we never have more than, I don't know, 10, 15 events on a product that size. It's a very small amount of events, and everything else, all the other information, go under property. So then under your property, you can have like the page name or the event action, the platform, etc. And so it really allows you to scale without creating that, insane amount of events over time that also become really difficult to understand.
So what is the event? Is then click or something like that? Or
okay. So the event is like view, tap, scroll, like, and then under the event you have tap, page registration, page onboarding, page like add a photo, etc. And then on that you start adding everything else, like your platform as well, and your within the event there's also other property that you can have, like the like page name, page property, but also button name, button property, etc. And that create like a really clean methodology, and then it's much easier to scale as well. It's easier to use because then you don't, in an event you're always trying to guess like what does something mean. But doing that way is just a bit easier because there's like 10 main events, and then everything else is like the page name or
so it's always the same structure, so to say, for each page, and then you can just filter by page. Which tool setup did you use actually? Like which tools did you use to do that?
To create the event?
Yeah, everything, like the whole tool. Where did you analyze it?
No, we just did it manually. So we just I know there's tool for that, and some of the company I work with even have like internal tool they created. But for us, we just took screenshot of the page, put it on an Excel document, type in like the event. You can have multiple tabs for the different area of the app. It's a very clean. You have a visual, so it's easier to remember what it means. And then that's all sent to engineer. They're adding it in the front end. It gets QA, it gets passed to Amplitude, it gets approved, and here you go.
Yeah. Interesting. See, time is running always when I talk to you. We have 5 minutes left. I actually thought we will talk much more about experimentation, but like the first part was really interesting as well, right?
We didn't get there.
We somehow, we stuck there for a while, but I think that was really interesting to see, like how you approached it, that you collected the data, analytic, quantitative, and also qualitative data, and then you set up like the whole tech setup. Was way bigger size than I actually expected it, right? And then you made informed decisions what to change, right? It was really super interesting to see. What is do you have any additional thoughts, or what is the boilerplate? Do you always approach something like that, since you're a product growth consultant, so you come into different teams, different setups? Is it always similar, or
it's a variant of that? So in different team you have different problems. So like I joined a team recently where we also had to, it was the opposite problem. We had too much tracking, too much event, no documentation. They don't use my methodology, so go on and guess what event means. So actually the data was there, like huge product, huge company, lots of data, but really, really difficult to understand it. So the time was spent more on trying to make sense of it. Already had interview method set up, like regular user insights as well, so that was much easier to access. Same thing with the team, like better way of working, I guess, like a bit more established, but also had to change things to work with growth, because I think that's something we don't often realize, but it's very different to do growth product management and like pure product management. There's aspects of product management that take a lot more time, where there's a lot more discovery, where the effort that needs to build what you're going to build is much bigger. So your confidence needs to be a lot higher. But when you do growth, it's a quantitative game. You need to test as much as possible to get this information. And you do it with really quick, small experiments that don't have a lot of effort. And those two things, it's not the same methodology. You can't have the same release cycle. You can't have the same ways of working. You can have the same documentation. It's very hard for me to keep documentation up to date when I'm running like 20 experiments, 30 experiments, on such a short period of time. It's obviously much easier when you do that one big feature that required, a bigger discovery, more psychology to it, more design exploration.
Is it a matter of how mature the product is, or is that actually not the point?
No, it's really the function. Like within a mature product, I genuinely believe that different teams should have different methodology based on what you're trying to achieve. If you're working in a core team where you're building what the core of the product is, your release cycle don't need to be weekly, for example, because what you're going to develop going to take more time, and probably you have more designer and more data scientists and spend a bit more time before something gets built. You do bigger discovery. You do a lot of tests before you start to build anything. And usually those teams have a bigger roadmap because it has a bigger impact on everything, on the cost of delivery, on the business, on the brand, on the positioning. Growth is different. Growth is applying tactic to an existing product.
Okay.
So it's much faster, and we need to move really fast. And to move really fast, you need, very short development cycle. You need to be able to have tech and data that give you a certain level of confidence in a much faster way.
Super interesting, but my first thought is like everybody wants growth, right? No matter which product you have. Like, okay, let's take a really old product, Microsoft Word, right? Yeah, of course you want growth as well, but they already have like a knowledge of body 18 years old, right? There is a lot of stability in the product, right? So of course it feels slower, right? That product compared to something small. So that's why I ask, okay, do you feel like, okay, it's depending on the maturity of the product?
Yeah, I really don't think so, because I worked with products that were very mature, and they, until today, the way they operate, they do growth the best. And I think those are products that really do understand that there's different setup and different needs for the team. Disclaimer, they always were a digital first product. I'm not sure if that's the same situation if you're bringing
super interesting, because like at a conference we will have Anya, and she's former director product at Tinder. And like I talked with her, I had a chat, and she told me they made so much A/B tests that it at some point did not have any impact anymore in the product. So like they had basically what you said as well, right? They had too much data, and at the end of the day, it didn't move the product anymore, right? And they also did go back to qualitative data, right? So to look again, okay, what's the journey and how can we help people? Super interesting.
I'm a strong believer that you need both. Even if you can get both at the same point of time, it's even better. But sometimes it's different point in the journey. But big data is you understand what's happening, but you don't know why it's happening.
Exactly.
And
It will never tell you the why. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and
always
qualitative tell you the why, but it doesn't tell you how important it is for your business or for your product.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Super interesting.
Thank you.
That was super nice. Thank you, Leah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for being so open, spending the time with us. It was really a pleasure. It was super interesting to talking to you, to see how you approach that, and many aspects I really found super interesting.
Thank you. No, I really like our chat as well. We should do that again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Without interruption.
Yeah, perfect. So, but now we let people go into their evening, right? And enjoy their personal life. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Leah. And
Bye.
see you again. Bye-bye. Stream.